Having air in your material can do some pretty terrible things to your dispensing process, so we're here to show you how to bleed that air out of your pump. There are two different parts of your pump that can be bled. The pump bleed valve is at the top and will bleed all of the air out of the pump mechanism itself. The inductor has two different bleed valves that will ensure that all of the air from your container is bled out. Bleeding at the inductor level is essential after installing a new container. We'll start by going over how to bleed the container at the inductor. If it's not already, check that the container is centered under the inductor. To minimize the mess you'll have to clean up after this process, place some shop rags around both bleed ports to catch any material that bleeds out. Lower the inductor onto the container. It should be parallel with the top. We don't want the inductor to engage with the material quite yet. Repair the inductor by removing the T-handle. Open the inductor vent valve by rotating it so that it's parallel with the fitting body. Using a small screwdriver, clean some of the grease out of the valve. It doesn't have to be perfect, it will just prevent it from shooting out when the bleeding process begins. Using the ram control lever, slowly lower the inductor into the container using the feathering technique. With safety glasses on, look down into the T-handle bleed port without putting your face right above it. As soon as material begins to come out, rotate the ram elevator lever to the stop position. Then reinstall the T-handle and clean up the material using the paper towel. If you have a moisture cure material such as urethane or any type of adhesive or sealant, you'll want to stop the ram right before the material starts coming out of the T-handle bleed port and reinstall the T-handle. This will prevent the material from acting like a thread locker. The ram pressure setting can be adjusted during the bleeding process. Just make sure you take note of the original setting. The higher the pressure, the harder it presses on material and causes the ram to move faster. Whereas lower pressure will cause the ram to move slower. Pressure adjustment can be helpful with especially thick or thin materials. Next, you'll want to check for air. This time, we'll be looking at the inductor vent valve. Rotate the ram elevator lever to the ram down position. Once you see a steady stream of airless material coming out of the valve, rotate the inductor vent valve until the knob is perpendicular to the fitting body. If your material has any curing properties, make sure to wipe up any material as soon as possible to prevent it from curing on top of the inductor plate or in the valve. If material is coming out rapidly, then there's a concern about waste. Decrease the ram regulator air pressure setting until this part of the procedure is complete. At this point, the container is properly bled. Next, we'll go over how to bleed the pump. Ensure that the pump is off either by pushing in the pump shutoff button or turning the red pump shutoff knob. Decrease the pump regulator air pressure to almost nothing. Open the pump bleed valve. A half a turn on the knob is typically enough to start. Hold a rag, paper towel, or position a container under the bleed valve to catch the material once it begins to flow. Then turn the pump back on. Slowly increase the pump regulator pressure until the pump is cycling approximately once every 2 seconds. Once material begins to flow, you will notice the pump slow down as it builds pressure. Once this happens, begin increasing the pump air pressure until a slow, steady stream of material is coming out of the bleed port. When air is present in the system, you will hear the air bubbles popping once they come out of the bleed valve. Continue bleeding the system until you have not heard any popping of the air bubbles for 3 to 4 seconds at a minimum and close the bleed valve. Readjust the pump regulator to its original setting, and if done correctly, the pump should be fully bled and ready to go. If you have any more questions about your pump, there is a pump playlist that will be linked in the description below. You can also go to our website or give us a call.